Morning, everyone. This is Travis Witherspoon from Capital Trading on YouTube. Hopefully, everybody's doing. No, I'm sorry, Trade with Travis on YouTube, Carter Cow Trading on Facebook and Instagram. Hope everybody's doing very well on this Wednesday morning. Making sure I can be able to get all the tags in. I'm sorry for being late. I had to make sure my sons can be able to get something to eat and be able to get prepared for this overall day. So we're going to end up starting off a little bit different because we're kind of late. So I just want to jump into it. We're not going to look at the economic calendar or anything else like that. We're going to hop right into being able to take a look at what's happening with the indexes, because I actually have a trade that's actually going on right now as we speak. I'm going to talk everyone through it as we go forward. So with that being said, I'm not a CTA, so I'm not going to tell you whether to buy or to sell. What I'm going to do is teach you education, and from that education, you can be able to make your own informed decision. Now, understand that Forex involves risk. It involves risk of being able to make money, also involves risk of being able to lose money. So please keep that in mind, and understand that past performance is not indicative of future results, which means that if you end up making money yesterday, not promised. Risk of being able to make money, also involves sorry. It is not promised that you're going to end up making money on that day. So with that being said, get ready to show myself onto the screen. How are you doing? If you're not familiar with who I am, my name is Travis Witherspoon. I'm a Forex trader. I've been trading for the last 5 years. What we do here with Trade with Travis is basically go through some overall trading pairs, take a look at the opportunities and see if we have any. And then after that, basically end up trading and doing some analysis off of it. And if we make money, then everyone makes money. If we don't, then obviously. I'm going to show myself onto the screen. Okay, there we go. Then we don't. So as I get through and make sure that everything is somewhat set up for us being able to take a look at it, we're gonna hop in kind of hot on this one. We're gonna end up hopping in kind of hot on this one. I'm looking at some trading opportunities on the. Then after that, so go. Looking at trading opportunities with the NASDAQ 100. I am hedging the market right now as we speak and being able to take a look at that. If you don't know what hedging is, basically what that is, to kind of sum it up, is that I am looking at buying and selling at the same time. And from that buying and selling at the same time, once I end up figuring out what the overall direction is, then after that, I will end up getting rid of one of my buys and getting rid of my buy or my sell. And then after that, adding another trade on. Essentially, what you're doing is that you're basically forfeiting some early profits to be able to understand what the direction is, and then after that, trading from there. Hopefully that makes sense. We really don't necessarily talk about hedging inside of this overall session, but this would be a good time to go ahead and get that out the way so everyone can be able to fully know what that is and be able to go from there. So once again, I am getting everything. I'm almost done for being able to get everything set up. I do apologize for kind of doing this at the last moment, but once again, trying to make sure that my boys could be able to eat was the most important thing, obviously. And they have my phone right now, so I wasn't able to necessarily do everything that I truly wanted to do, but we end up going from there. So as I'm sharing this onto every page right now that I'm typically part of, hopefully everybody's doing well. Do me a favor, make sure that you end up hitting the like button. Make sure that you end up sharing this with somebody that you believe that will end up helping them out when it comes down to actually learning how to be able to Forex trade or anything else like that. Also, if you have any questions about any type of trading pair as we go through this 20 minutes on being able to take a look at some overall trading pairs, don't hesitate to be able to ask. Obviously, that's the biggest thing that we're doing here is interactive, and obviously we want to be able to go from there. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at that. Go ahead and get to the charts. I don't want to hold anything back when it comes down to that. So NASDAQ 100. What are we looking at? We're looking at this from a daily perspective. From a daily perspective, what we see is that the market is in a push zone. We should be looking at this market starting to push up, and overall long term, we want this market to be able to push up towards the D extension at 14,320. Earlier today, my EA actually ended up placing me into a buy, but typically when I don't know what the overall direction is, I would typically end up doing some type of hedging to be able to make sure I can be able to get the best bet when it comes down to being able to trade that. Now, essentially, because I end up taking a buy, what ended up happening was that if you only trade one-sided, then that means that what happens is that if you end up losing on that overall trade, in which I'm going to show my screen right now, in which if you end up losing that trade or you're in a losable position in that trade automatically, then that means that you just automatically lose from that position. You don't make anything off of it and you just go from there. Now, by hedging, what you can be able to do is that you can be able to understand what the overall direction, you can be able to figure out what the overall direction is by being able to place in a buy and a sell at the same time. And once you end up figuring out what the direction is, you just get rid of the buy or the sell. Currently, right now, what I can see is the market is basically in the sell zone. And at least early today, what are we looking for? We might end up seeing that the market may end up falling down to at least this 12,700 area, in which that was my overall take profit position for the overall drop if the market was to fall. I don't believe that the market will fall all the way down here. But taking a look at it from a short-term perspective, we can see that the 618 is very close to this overall position. We see that the market fell down to the 618 one time before. So 12,700 is one of those positions that I'm actually taking a look at as a position as a short-term move that the market could be able to go to. Now that's 185 points away from this overall position at this particular point. And it makes sense that if I'm going to end up going after a position, I'm going to go after this point of control. I don't think that the market is going to completely fall down and go any lower than that. I just think that the market will probably end up resetting and trying to go back down to this particular point if the market is going to end up falling. And because we see that it's in the sell zone, we may end up seeing that there may end up being another 8 to probably about another 8 to 12 hours of overall downside movement if this continues to be the trend moving forward. And being able to take a look at that overall move. Now, once again, the reason why you end up hedging is because you want to figure out what the direction was. I end up getting into this position when this market was at, my initial trade was at 12,934. Now, if the market pops back up and starts to move back up based off of this movement, then that means that the buy would end up being in control and the sell would end up being off. But because I'm seeing what the overall direction is, at least early, is to the overall downside, then I can get rid of my buy. It may seem like I'm actually losing money at first, but really and truthfully, I'm not. What's happening is that if you buy and sell at the same time, then that means that you're basically moving off the spread. Once the market ends up moving down, you get rid of one of those, you get rid of the buy or sell. Yes, you may lose money when it comes down to the account size, but you have another one that's already in profit with the same amount. So really it's about what's happening with your second and third trade. If your second and third trade are in the actual direction of overall higher probability based off of that day, then that means that you end up making money off of that movement. So essentially what I'm seeing is this. I see that we have a counter trend line break. We are basically on this candlestick that is going to end up going into 9:30, to 9 o'clock, basically right around this time. We see that we end up getting further downside movement, then we're basically in the direction of highest probability. We're trading down, expecting that if we end up breaking past this area of 12,893, that the market will fall into this area where there's a low trade probability of people actually buying, and the market could fall down to the 1745 area, all the way down to the 12,700 area. And that's what I'm looking for right now. You have not got into this trade at this particular point. What I will look at doing is that we do have a counter trend line break. If you're interested in being able to get in, I will look at the 15-minute time. And I will look at, get out for that. We'll look at the 15-minute timer. We do have another counter trend line break. If you want to be a little bit more tight on this one, I will place my stop just above these overall wick highs, which was at 12,944, which was my original position that I ended up getting it, which was the original position where I ended up getting in at. And then after that, trying to trade down and try to see if you could be able to get anything out of that. Once again, low trade volume will end up happening if we end up breaking past the 12,880 area. If that does happen, then after that, we have further downside movement to the downside, and you can be able to capitalize off of that. But I will place my stop above 12,944. Yeah, I would place my stop loss below 12,944 for the overall movement. You can use whatever equity management that goes along with it. Remember, we use trade tickets, and that kind of lets us know what's going to end up being our stop loss when it comes down to the overall movement. Now, second thing, once you end up knowing, and I'm giving away free game, so I feel that way this morning. Even if we only look at a couple pairs, I want to make sure we end up getting this out the way. Once you end up figuring out what your overall stop loss is, or what you end up figuring out what the overall direction is for its overall movement. What's going on, Chris? Your first initial trade is going to end up having a stop loss that's going to end up being very high. right? So let's say if we end up getting into a sale, let's say got into our buy and we got into our sell right around this position. There goes our sell and buy right here. We figured out the direction is going to end up being lower. Let's say if our stop loss is up here. Well, we end up placing in our second entry once we end up knowing what the direction is. So let's say our second entry is in this color, which is brown, right? Or dark brown, whatever, right? Well, our stop loss for this one, I'm going to end up placing pretty much either above or right at the direction of the first trade. Well, why am I doing that? The reason why I'm actually doing that is because, one, I really only want to be able to have one position that's going to end up putting me at, I don't want to lose on both positions, if that makes sense. I'm already up on one, right? Meaning that because I end up buying and selling at the same time and the market end up going to the downside, and we can see that this market is moving to the downside early, that means that I'm in profit already on one trade. So if this trade goes all the way up and breaks past this overall original entry point, then that means that I would lose on this trade and break even on that trade. Well, essentially, basically what you end up doing is basically losing twice, which doesn't make any sense when it comes down to how you want to trade in the first place, right? So essentially, my thought process in doing this, and this is what I typically do, especially when I don't know what the overall direction is, instead of forcing yourself to be able to lose money if the market ends up popping all the way up, we already know what the direction is. Let's move the stop loss of the first initial trade back down to break even. So that means that now if you lose on this one, yes, you can lose on both, but you're not going to lose on all three, right? And once the market really starts moving, then essentially what you can be able to do is move the stop loss of both of them down here. So that means that now you basically assured yourself the money that you originally started off with, and you have a free trade off of the new one that's actually moving into the downside. Okay, hopefully that makes sense when it comes down to being able to take a look at this from an overall video perspective and being able to go from there. But essentially, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to because we end up hedging, basically what we end up doing, we end up forfeiting the first initial profit that we end up getting right here. Now, if the market moves in the direction that we think it's going to end up moving in, then that means that be able to place our stop loss in here, protect our overall profit, and allow the market to be able to move down, right? As long as the market keeps on moving to the downside, then that means that this trade that we end up getting into second will end up being the trade that allows us to be able to make our money for the overall day. Now, we do that because, once again, we're trying to figure out what the direction is. Once we end up figuring out direction, then after that, it makes it a little bit easier to be able to make trades and be able to put yourself into a better position. And then after that, you can be able to add on once the market keeps down. In this case, if that does continue. So hopefully that makes sense as we go through and take a look at it. While we're looking at this, remember, typically when you look at pairs like this, you can kind of see what's happening with other pairs and kind of getting an identity about what's happening with the other ones. I turned off my EA for US 30, and I'm kind of upset that I did that now because I should have turned it on earlier this morning while I was by my computer. That has basically hit a sell trade as well, based off of this overall movement. We can see that parabolic SARs and everything else like that are starting to turn over. I'm going to show you this on the chart. I'm going to take a look at it now. US 30, as we're looking at it, we see that same initial move to the downside. Both of them are kind of moving pretty much in the same position. Now the question is this going to end up being the primary move for the day? We can clearly see that the market is in a push zone. So obviously, there's an odds-on favorite that the market should be moving bullish because this market hasn't completed its overall de-extension at 35,520. Now, that's the initial move, and that's just being honest. We're looking at that overall move as move where you think that the market will end up going long term. But from a short-term perspective, we can see that the reason why we end up getting into the short trade is because that essentially what's happening is that, one, the market does not have necessarily all that much momentum, and we're starting to see that this market has reached the overall top to where it hasn't broken past 31,260, and it has had another crossover for the overall trend line break. Now we're looking at this from US 30. The question is, will it break this overall low right here? The market is still considered bullish to me until it breaks its overall counter trend line break. If it breaks that overall counter trend line break, then we should see that the market will start to fall back down to these overall areas. Um, and it will probably end up going back down to the 30,700 area if it does happen like that. But odds on favor, if we're looking at any position for a short-term movement throughout the overall day, I'll probably end up paying attention to right around right there. All right, so I'll look at 30,850 as the overall position of where the market could initially go. And if that does happen, then obviously there goes your overall move throughout the overall day for it dropping. But right now, I'm not going to enter on that trade. I can see that if I was trading this based off my EA, I would have got into it an hour ago, and I would have been up by now. Now I could necessarily trade it, but once again, I'm already in on one indices trade, and I'm not going to force the issue. I can see XPX 500 is doing the same thing for its overall movement. We got time for one more pair, and typically when we end up only having that short amount of time to be able to go through and take a look at all of them, I want to make sure that we can be able to get into the best possible pairs. Well, the best possible pairs that I think that you can be able to typically look at right now at this particular point in time is going through an overall screener and seeing which pairs actually have momentum right now. So if we're looking at our rally momentum, what we're looking at is anything that is right around 20 or anything that is right around 21 that has a RSI that is either below 20 or above 20 or right at that particular point. Currently, right now, what I can see is NZD, pound NZD is at 45%. It's neutral. You see that it's at 21%. We had 32 for Euro Aussie. The stochastic is at 10. That meant that the market basically failed already. Take a look at Euro Aussie. And we'll see what's happening with Euro Aussie for the overall movement. Then after that, we'll go and take a look at some other pairs and see if there's any other trading opportunities. So, we talked about the pound, and hopefully we can be able to get into the buy. Market broke, gave us a counter trend line break, or gave us a test, and then after that broke up. That was the move that we were looking for. You got into that yesterday. Congratulations. That was something that we ended up looking at a little bit earlier. But going into Euro Aussie, what are we seeing? I'm gonna do this real quick. I'm gonna show you how fast you can kind of get an idea about what's actually happening. One, we can see on a monthly that the direction has been bullish. We see higher highs and higher lows. So we're going to look at what's happening with the overall fractals. We can see from a month-to-month perspective that this market has been falling, but the monthly is basically in the buy zone. So the question is, are you looking at buying or are you looking at selling at this particular point in time? If you're looking at long-term movement, you would like to see that the market will actually end up going up. Currently right now, I can see that for the short term, we see that the market is actually moving to the downside. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go to the weekly. I'm going to say that the direction is actually bearish, at least for right now, and see what's actually happening for the overall particular move. Maybe it might be a chance to be able to see if the market is going to fall down, where would it actually go. Now, if we're looking at where it is right now, we can see that the market is basically in the push zone. We can also see that the market does fall. It's going to fall down to 137, which is almost 2,000 pips from this overall point. You see from upside movement, if we're looking at this from an upside perspective, that the market is about to hit the A for its overall movement as well. Which one gives you more favor for the overall move? I think the downside movement is a little bit more favorable for this one. But if we're looking at this from a weekly perspective, I am looking at possibly being able to buy if there is some long-term movement from there that may end up happening. But right now, I still think that the sellers are basically in control. So if we are saying that the sellers are in control, we're going to end up looking at and seeing what's happening over the course of the last few days and see if there is a position where the market could go down to. Currently, because the market is basically in a push zone, there's a D extension at 151 for this overall spot. That's too far away based off of a 2-hour, based off of a daily perspective. I'm going to focus in on the 2-hour, see if there's any type of scalpable position, because I don't like where the actual I don't like what a stochastic is this particular. So from a 2-hour perspective, looking at this overall high, and if you don't know what we're doing, I'm basically going through and taking a look at the Fibonacci's. This is what our business is really kind of backed off of. Our primary way of being able to teach is Fibonacci fundamentals. If you're interested in being able to learn a little bit more, you can be able to hop inside of one of our free boot camps, be able to hop in and see what's actually going on. Just literally, we have one each and every day. At 3 o'clock, you want to hop in. That is inside of the actual description at www.cartercowcapital.com/start here to be able to hop in one of those actual scheduled times. Okay. Now, I'm not going to take this trade, and the reason why I'm not going to take this trade is because of a couple reasons. One, if we look at this from this overall market, the extension is expected to be at 1.5462. You can see that the market is bearish. That there's no denying that. But I also see that this market is making a little bit of a wedge, and I'm trying to see wedge is at a point where we're actually losing a lot of volume. So here's right here. There goes your low. That this market is doing that right there. We're basically in the middle of this overall wedge. So we're not at a high price, nor we're not at a low price. So it's not necessarily the best position to be able to get into. I'm going to end up waiting on this one. Maybe might end up seeing this one a little bit more in the London session. And then after that, possibly be able to get a high price. We can get a high price, and after that, we can look at being able to sell again just for a short-term movement and being able to stay away from there. So let's go back to what we ended up talking about. We talked about US 30. US 30 basically is selling down. If it breaks past its overall point, then the market is going to be completely bearish. Talked about NAS 100 and looking at being able to sell on that one. We actually have a position in at this particular point in time. We talked about the original second position that we end up getting into and being able to scalp. Originally, right now, we can see the direction is actually going in our favor for us being able to move to the downside. So that's putting us in profit at this particular point. The question is, where's this market going to end up falling down? Well, I'm not necessarily trying to swing for the fences because the market is in basically in a bullish push zone. So remember, from an overall position, I'm going to stay bearish, but the thought process is if this market ends up faltering anywhere around 12,700, then I'm going to get out for the overall spot. We can see the 618 is right here, right around 12,730. We can see that possibly there'll be other traders that will possibly want to be able to get in right around that position, looking for bullish movement to the upside, right? And that will include me for its overall position. So the safe bet and the safe trade today, if we're looking at any trade, will end up being a trade to the downside all the way down to 12,745 to 12,700. See what you can get off of that. And then after that, you can be able to move from there for your overall position. All right. Now, if you like what we end up doing, please make sure that you end up liking the Carter Cow Capital business page. Please make sure that you end up subscribing to Trade with Travis. And make sure that you end up typing in a like, sharing this off to someone when it comes down to overall videos that you like that. I truly appreciate that for us being able to help me out, for us being able to get the algorithm, be able to take a look at what we end up doing. Like always, plan your trade, trade your plan. Also, the next few classes will end up being pre-recorded. We're actually going back to school tomorrow if everything kind of plays back out. Remember, I'm a school teacher by nature first, and obviously I'm a teacher when it comes down to my overall business here. When it comes down to that, so it may end up being inside of the classroom for the next few days, or maybe until the end of the actual school year when it comes down to that. And we'll pay attention to that. Also, pay attention to some of my Facebook videos. Today is a retwist day. 7 months in, and everyone that's basically been watching these videos has seen my hair from being just a regular fro to all the way down to where we are right now. It's really growing. This is a full year of overall hair growth, but 7 months of overall dreadness. So we'll see what it looks like when it comes down to retwist day tomorrow. But like always, plan your trade, trade your plan. I'll see each and every one of y'all tomorrow. Take it easy.